Tansei, I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. After months of criticism, it didn't take long for Randy Boissonnault's status as a cabinet minister to come up at a House of Commons committee on Tuesday. Boissonnault, the Minister of Employment, has been in hot water for shifting his claims on his family's Indigenous heritage and allegedly misrepresenting Global Health Imports, a business he co-owned and claimed to be Indigenous owned when bidding for federal contracts in 2020. Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hajdu was also in the hot seat this week as a witness before a committee looking into Indigenous procurement. Conservative MP Garnet Genuis asked repeatedly if Boissonnault should be kicked out of cabinet.
Minister, should Randy Boissonnault still be in cabinet?
Well, I can tell you that the business that Mr. Boissonnault was involved in was never on the Indigenous business directory.
Do you think he should still be in cabinet?
That's not a decision for me to make, Mr. Genuis.
Okay. It's interesting that you're not saying yes. Do you endorse his conduct as minister?
I can tell you that Mr. Boissonnault's business was never listed on the Indigenous business directory.
The NDP are also speaking out about Boissonnault on Tuesday. NDP MP Blake Desjardins called for Prime Minister Trudeau to step in and take immediate action and wants Boissonnault to resign. Have a listen.
When it comes to ensuring the justice for Indigenous people, justice for the good people of Edmonton Centre, and that means Randy Boissonnault must resign. If he does not resign, it's incumbent upon the Prime Minister to kick someone like that out. I'm always happy to see my colleagues go on a soul-searching journey. It cannot come at a cost or expense to taxpayers. If that means him resigning in order to find his soul, then he should resign as an MP.
The Nisitchewayasik Cree Nation in northern Manitoba is adding new measures to its state of emergency to crack down on violence and illegal activity. A chief's bulletin published Monday said that alcohol, drug use, bootlegging, illegal drug activity, and gang violence are causing increased violence in the community. The Cree Nation has been under a state of emergency since July of 2023. Recently, a 13-year-old boy was critically injured in a drive-by shooting while he was in his bedroom. Starting December 2nd, NCN will limit the amount of alcohol and cannabis that can be brought into the community. A curfew for children under 18 will be in effect from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m., and all home-based businesses must close by 11 p.m. No visitors or non-NCN members will be allowed entry between midnight and 6 a.m. Members caught bootlegging, selling illegal drugs, or threatening violence may be evicted or banished. NCN says more measures may be added if the violence doesn't stop. More than 40,000 people took to the streets and protested at New Zealand's parliament this week over a proposed bill that could affect treaty rights. The Maoris say the proposed changes will reverse progress for the Maori, while those behind the bill say all New Zealanders should have the same rights. 42,000 people carried the Maori national flag and protest signs calling for New Zealand lawmakers to reject the Treaty Principles Bill, which was introduced earlier in the month by the new Libertarian Act New Zealand Party. The New Zealand Party do not have enough seats to pass the bill on their own, but Maori people say if passed, the bill would arbitrarily change the Treaty of Waitangi signed with Britain in 1840. The Maori make up about 20% of New Zealand's population. Similar to Indigenous people in Canada, the Maori have higher levels of poverty, incarceration, and poor health. Last week, a Maori MP ripped up a copy of the bill and led her colleagues in a haka. More discussions between healthcare professionals have been underway to implement Indigenous practices within the healthcare system. A panel organized by the Canadian Psychiatric Association hosted a recent talk in Montreal. As APTN Savannah Craig reports, some healthcare facilities are already doing this, but the question now is if it can be extended across Canada.
Indigenous medicine, Indigenous healing systems are firmly in place, and that they work, and that they need to be part of the treatment and care plan for our people when they come into our system.
Elder Diane Longboat, is one of the 3 members invited to speak on the importance of integrating Indigenous practices within Canada's healthcare system at this year's Canadian Psychiatric Association's event.
We do need more work for culturally grounded research and culturally grounded clinical services.
Longboat is Mohawk from 6 nations of the Grand River Territory. She is an elder in the Shakwa-Bay-Mukwa Leadership Circle at the Toronto Mental Health Hospital. This is the first centre in Canada to lead a culturally responsive way to provide healthcare for Indigenous people.
And I recommend having a First Nations, Inuit, and Métis standing committee of the board.
Longboat said institutions should not wait on governments to implement better healthcare for Indigenous patients.
They have not taken seriously the stories of our people. They have not taken seriously the mental health and addiction challenges that have been a direct result of government policy. And so until the Government of Canada and the provincial governments take the voices of our people seriously, we will continue to see so many of our people suffering from inadequate housing, poor education, poor access to mental health care.
Panelist Dr. Jason Pennington is a member of the Huron-Wendat Nation and a surgeon at the Scarborough Health Network.
The impacts of colonialism, racism, social exclusion. Those are the things that have happened to Indigenous people, and until we address those basic needs, we will never attain health equity with the rest of the Canadian population.
He identified 3 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to actions that need to be implemented. The calls to action he identified include increasing the representation of Indigenous people within the healthcare profession and requiring students in the medical field to undergo Indigenous-centered training.
The healthcare system should do a better job embracing Indigenous health concepts and practices.
Pennington says this training should not only be taught in schools, but that this education should be continued throughout one's professional career.
It's something each and every healthcare provider has to be continually working on.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
By 2030, the federal government wants to have every household in Canada to have access to high-speed internet. On Friday, they announced $38 million will be invested into northern Manitoba for the upgrade, most of which are Indigenous communities. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
In the middle of the Human Rights Museum, Dan Vandel, Minister responsible for economic development in the Prairies, said high-speed internet connectivity is a human right.
For people in rural, northern, and isolated communities, dependable, high-speed internet can be life-changing.
It's why the feds are investing $38 million under the Universal Broadband Fund to connect over 3,600 homes in 14 rural communities in Manitoba's north, with 3,000 of those homes in First Nations, including Sapatoyak Cree Nation. Their chief, Nelson Janai, says his community's had big plans in telehealth and education for years, but because of its location, they've been crippled.
We had a vision of how to make it work. We had a lab service where x-ray would be done, where we'd be able to sit down with telehealth. But because of connectivity, we weren't able to do that. Back in 2007, we built the school to grade 12. Smart boards were there. But because of connectivity, we weren't able to access them. So now the opportunity is there.
Opportunity that also includes investing in Indigenous communities. David Muswagon is with Kichisipi Communications, a joint venture between Pimicikamak and Norway House. The business will provide services to the 2 First Nations and some of their neighbors.
This is a corporation that's going to be a new ISP service provider that's going to be competing with the Bells, the Shaws, and everything. We're not rolling out the red carpet for anybody. We're playing for keeps on this one because we want that economic power to be able to build a foundation for our people, create jobs, create training, and create revenue. So that way we can start getting our people off the social services system.
The plan is to have the 14 communities connected by January 2025. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. And you can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Today is Transgender Remembrance Day. We'll tell you how the day is being recognized. Welcome back. The Chiefs of Ontario and the Ontario First Nations Young People's Council is highlighting an important day this week. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance, a day for family and community members to remember transgender people who have lost their life to violence and discrimination. Young People's Council co-chair Kieran Davis says it recognizes that violence and hate directed at gender diverse people stems from systems and attitudes that need to change. They say diversity in gender and identity has always existed, and it's time to reclaim respect and understanding and draw strength from Indigenous teachings. Transgender Day of Remembrance started in 1999 to honor Rita Hester, a trans woman who was killed in Massachusetts. It's estimated 1.6 million people in the U.S. between 13 years old and older identify as transgender and are 4 times more likely to be victims of violence. 2025 will mark the 35th anniversary of the term Two-Spirit. It was created to represent Indigenous peoples with fluid gender identities and sexualities. This week, a historic flag unveiling and documentary premiere took place in Winnipeg ahead of the anniversary. Reporter Sierra Bettens has the story.
In 1990, Elder Mira Laramie introduced the term Two-Spirit at the 3rd Annual Intertribal Native American, First Nations, Gay and Lesbian American Conference in Winnipeg. It comes from the Anishinaabe term, Nijmanadoeg, describing a person with masculine and feminine characteristics. It helped Charlotte Nolan understand who she was.
When the term was coined here in Manitoba, I was sitting in the sweat lodge at the University of BC, and that's when I was told who I was.
On Tuesday at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, the International Day of Pink organization hosted a celebration to honor Two-Spirit history and resilience. The event kicked off with the unveiling of the world's first Two-Spirit pride flag. Patrick Hunter, a Two-Spirit Anishinaabe artist from Ontario, designed it. It features 2 eagle feathers, representing the balance of masculine and feminine spirits. They're framed by a sun and a rainbow of dots.
The sun, he kind of provides us with everything else that we need in this life. And I just felt like using dots instead of sort of like colorful bars would be cool, because, you know, the earliest artwork that we see there out on pictographs out in the world are dots and circles, and I just thought what a throwback to, 7 generations ago.
Brielle Beardy Linklater, a Two-Spirit activist from the Nisichawayasik Cree Nation, was featured in the documentary Reemergence, which premiered at the event.
We have a changing population, and we have so many young people today who know more about who they are, but they want the resources that go along with it, and I think this video will lead to those necessary changes.
The event was put on ahead of the Day of Pink, an annual anti-bullying and anti-homophobia event held on April 9th. The Day of Pink organization is now launching a Two-Spirit curriculum guide with free learning materials for teachers and students. Sierra Buttons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We now want to tell you about this week's WebPole Question. Over on our website we ask, do you feel you've ever been racially profiled while shopping? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. Have your say at www.aptnnews.ca. 3 Anishinaabe communities in northwestern Ontario say they are preparing for one of their biggest legal battles. Here's Tiara Wheatley with a preview of what's at the center of that fight.
What exactly happened here at Anishinaabe Park?
Chief Chris Skeed of Wajashk Onagum says this land was illegally taken from his great-grandparents. Now he and 2 other neighboring First Nations have come together to celebrate a legal move with community. They've just filed a statement of claim seeking the return of Anishinaabe Park.
It was a place of healing. I feel like we're missing that piece.
In 1974, an occupation occurred on these lands, gaining international headlines.
They had guns and everything, so it was hard for us as parents.
I'm T.R. Wheatley. I'll bring you to Kenora, Ontario, where 3 First Nations are still fighting for land back 50 years later.
I know dealing with the municipality, we gave ample opportunity to do exactly that.
Taking their fight from the front lines to the courthouse.
Fashion and sustainability was the topic at a recent conference in Saskatoon. That story when we come back. Stay with us. Starting on the east, rain in St. John's with 8, Charlottetown 6. Cartwright 4, Happy Valley, Goose Bay 4. Saguenay 4, Val-d'Or 3. Ottawa 4, Sault Ste. Marie 8. 6 in Sudbury, Wawa 7. -1 in Churchill, Thompson -1. 2 in Gimli, -4 in Dauphin. Estevan -9, Swift Current -14. -13 in Buffalo Narrows, Uranium City, sunny and -15. -12 in Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray -13. -8 in Medicine Hat, Calgary -7. Tofino 9, Penticton 4. Fort Nelson -17, Dease Lake -16. Watson Lake -18, Mayo -26. Yellowknife -18 in Sun, Wrigley -22. Colville Lake -23, Deline -21. Baker Lake -4, Cambridge Bay -14. And Arctic Bay -3, Igloolik -7. Hundreds of years before first contact, Indigenous people roamed the prairies on foot, moving with the seasons and food source like the buffalo. Recently, a group of elders and researchers are working with landowners to rediscover ancient sites once used by the first peoples of the land. CTV's Mick Favel reports.
I don't doubt that there's history that archaeology would reveal as being under our feet.
Elders from the Touchwood Agency Tribal Council on a piece of land thought to have once been used by their ancestors. The land near the town of Davidson has been untouched by researchers, giving the elders and the academics accompanying them an opportunity to reimagine what the place was used for hundreds of years ago.
It's an honor to be asked to come see these places and accompany with the elders and see how they feel and react to places, and they share their knowledge of it, those places, and we share the little bit that we know with them about the places, and then we both learn in the process.
Andrew Miller is a professor at the First Nations University of Canada. He has been working with the Touchwood elders for a number of years, learning about the history of the region passed down through oral history.
There's a number of sites that we're coming to understand with the help of archaeologists and the elders themselves. They're able to tell us places that folks should understand as First Nations places, or places that have a lot of First Nations history.
In September, the group made their first trip to an historical site near the town of Craven. Hundreds of years ago, this ravine was used by Indigenous peoples as a winter camping ground. Since that time, information has been passed down about the place and its importance.
For a long time, since the 70s, I passed by here. I was here with my uncle, John Skibox, who was the late senator of Cheyenne. He was a historian. So we stopped by and we walked a little ways to the ravine. He was telling me where our ancestors reside. And at that time, I felt elated and I was happy to be on a site that offered some connection. I felt the same way today.
As winter approaches, the group has no plans to visit any other locations this year. But Miller says in the future, they will continue to do so in celebration of Indigenous history.
We don't often think of Indigenous history, but we really ought to. We really ought to think in terms of where people were 200 years ago, 400 years ago. These are not beyond our grasp. We can think about those times in pretty concrete ways. This is one way to understand that past.
Fashion and sustainability came together in a unique way in Saskatoon recently, with more than 100 attending, all learning how Indigenous culture can bring together the latest fashions while preserving the environment. Reporter Chelsea Rossett with Indigenous Communications Arts at the First Nations University in Regina was there too and has this story.
The 2024 Saskatchewan Fashion Week kicks off with a powerful start, launching the Design Legacies Indigenous Fashion and Textile Summit, proudly presented by the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies. This conference brings to the forefront essential themes of sustainability in fashion and the strength of community. The two-day event took place at the Delta Bessborough in Saskatoon and was attended by delegates with an interest in fashion and community building. One of the prominent voices at the summit was Sage Paul, a Denisovan designer from the English River First Nation in Treaty 10 territory. Paul is working towards a renowned vision for fashion that weaves together traditional values and contemporary sustainability practices.
Fashion has this power to bring people together. It keeps people connected. There are so many elements to fashion, as you know. There's there's the design, there's the production, there's the marketing, there's the stories and the tradition.
Also presenting at the summit is Audrey Drever from the Mistawasis and Atakakook Cree Nations. Drever, a program director at the First Nations University of Canada's Regina campus, shared her insight on the importance of honoring history and community in Indigenous fashion.
Learning the true history, we actually learn what it is that we come from, what the legacy is that we come from, the knowledge, the level of sciences and maths and all those things that go into the creation of a work of art.
By including Indigenous voices in the fashion community, Sask Fashion Week hopes to create a more sustainable future on the runway. Conference transitions to the main runway. The spotlight shifts to emerging youth designers and Indigenous-inspired collections.
There's not enough representation for Native American designers and Native American models, so I believe that that's very important. I enjoy what I do.
It wasn't really something that I seen growing up here and whatever, and then it just means a lot, bringing our culture into something new and something like this.
In present day, now that we're able to have a big global Indigenous community here in Saskatoon, it helps to unite all of us together through fashion and through art.
This is an opportunity for them to bring their dreams and their creativity to life with mentors and with their peers.
With commitment to inclusion and sustainability, Saskatchewan Fashion Week 2024 showcases a blend of tradition and innovation, setting the stage for a future where Indigenous designers play a central role in the fashion world. In Saskatoon, I'm Chelsea Reset.
Thank you, Chelsea. And that's your daytime newscast for this Wednesday, November 20th. We're back again in a few hours with your evening newscast with more news stories. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.